Okay, all right, let's pick up with roll call then. So I'll now go through and introduce the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you are not speaking. You may unmute your microphone when you have a question or would like to speak, but just remember to mute your phone when you're done speaking. All right, committee members, as I call your name, just say a quick hello. Secretary Sandra Frempong.
Hello, everyone.
All right, and Nate Kuzinski.
Hi, everybody.
All right, and then there's myself. All right. In the interest of time, we'll skip the city staff intros, and they can introduce themselves when they get to their part in the agenda. All right. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. Additionally, I ask that committee members raise their hand to speak, and I will call upon them. It has been 18 months since the committee last met. And as you know, there have been some changes to the volunteer boards and commissions. So today we have a few administrative tasks that we need to address to start with. So let's hop into those. First item is the approval of the minutes of the July 18th, 2024 Audit Committee meeting. Are there any questions or changes to those minutes?
None.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I move the motion.
Sandra,
Yes.
second?
Second.
All right, thanks, Nate. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Committee members, when I say your name, please say aye or nay. Sandra Frempong,
Aye.
Nate Uzinski,
Aye.
and myself, aye. So the minutes have been approved. All right, next item, appointment of officers. So this is a little bit of a change from what it was last time we met. So the committee is required to nominate and elect both a chair and vice chair. If the audit committee wishes to have a secretary to take more detailed minutes beyond the action minutes recorded by staff, we can vote on that position as well, but it's not required. I will also mention that it's permissible to nominate yourself. So I will call for nominations and we will vote on each position individually. So do we have any nominations for the position of chair of the audit committee? I would nominate myself. Any other nominations?
I'll nominate you, Nate. I think you've done a great job.
I appreciate it, Nate.
I nominate you also. So
All right, let's do it in the interest of time here. What about for the position of vice chair?
Sandra, you were secretary last time. Do you want to continue doing that? And, or do you want to do vice chair and I could take over secretary?
I would be vice. I would prefer vice chair.
All right, vice chair, sounds good. And then I would vote to skip the secretary. I think the minutes as they're currently being documented are sufficient. Anyone disagree with that? No? All right. Let's do this with some votes then. Let's make this formal. Is there a motion to nominate myself, Nate Hathaway, for chair of the audit committee?
Yes.
Sandra, a second?
Yes.
Second.
All right. We'll call our names and we'll vote aye or nay. Sandra Frempong,
Aye.
Nate Uzinski.
Aye.
I'm not sure that's.
All right, and myself, Nate Hathaway, aye.
That's why.
All right, next, is there a motion to nominate Sandra Frempong for vice chair of the audit committee?
When I did
Yes.
Bridget,
All right, second, myself.
when I did
All
Colleen.
right, so we have a motion and a second, so voting on this. Sandra Frempong,
The first.
Aye.
Nate Uzinski,
Aye.
and Nate Hathaway, aye. All right, so that motion passes. Speaking through this, next item,
that's
adoption
still
of
me,
rules,
the same
updated
phone
rules
number,
and procedure. So the committee is required to adopt new rules of procedure in
So
order
I
to
think
bring
it's-
all the city's
is
volunteer
it still the
boards
same?
into alignment.
1855.
So this requires a formal vote once again.
Yeah,
Any
I think it's-
questions or comments on the rules of procedure from the committee members?
No.
I don't have anything. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the audit committee rules of procedure?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second from Sandra. All right. So let's vote on this then. Sandra Krempong,
Aye.
Nate Wazensky,
Aye.
and myself, Nate Hathaway. Aye. All right. One last item to address before we get to the updates. Adoption of the regular meeting schedule. So in discussion with staff, the current norm for meetings of boards and commissions is to meet on an as-needed basis when the staff assigns a task for a special meeting. Essentially, we won't have any regularly scheduled meetings unless otherwise decided. Any questions, comments on that?
Is that something that's going to be permanent?
Can you say that again, Sandra?
Is that going to be a permanent procedure or is just for a limited time? Is that going to be like, is the meeting going to be as needed from now on?
So I believe all boards and commission meetings are placed on hold through June of 2027.
Okay.
So until then, what this is suggesting is we will only meet when city staff decide that there are items that we need to be discussing. And
Okay.
then a special meeting will be called.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Can I get a motion to approve that meeting schedule?
I support the motion.
Nate, second for Nate?
Second?
All right. So we got to vote on this one last time. Sandra Krempong,
Aye.
Nate Wazensky,
Aye.
all right, myself, Nate Hathaway, aye. So we are through that, and we can move on to the updates. All right, so next item is the internal audit program update. I'll turn it over to Frank McCowan, a strategic services manager, to provide an update on the city's internal audit program. And Frank, I'll let you introduce the team from Plant Moran, who will tell us about the risk assessment and audit plan.
Great, thank you, Nate. Appreciate the introduction and thank you for your leadership. Good afternoon, my name is Frank McGowan. I'm the Strategic Services Manager in the Finance and Management Services Department. I supervise the internal audit program for the city, and I'm going to cover our key takeaways and provide the overall internal program audit update, and then I'll introduce the team from Plant Moran to present the most recent risk assessment and current audit plan activities. So I'm going to share my screen beginning now. And I am confirming that you can see my screen. Is that correct?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to be looking at my screen, so if you have any questions, I can't see you, so please let me know. Excuse me, starting with key takeaways. Our key takeaways are that we have completed audits at Harris Cherokee Center for cash handling and for fleet management operations. Those are both complete. We had inventory audits conducted for fleet management, Harris Cherokee Center, Asheville, and the water warehouse as well. The city is now co-sourcing internal audit with the team at Plant Moran. The city has the city has contracted an internal auditor for monitoring and compliance for our community development block grant disaster recovery. And the ethics hotline has seen moderate use since July 2024. So moving on, first I'll talk about the Jefferson Wells audits of Harris Cherokee Center and fleet management. Harris Cherokee Center, as I mentioned, was a cash handling audit. Jefferson Wells conducted cash handling audit with HCCA. There were no significant findings. The audit work identified opportunities to update the reconciliation process for concession sales and Finance and Harrah's staff implemented a specific cash handling policy for Harrah's and additional training in response to the audit recommendation. They also conducted a fleet management operations audit. The audit resulted in 4 findings. The recommendations focused on fuel policy and process improvements, procurement card use, development of SOPs, and physical security. Fleet management has prioritized addressing these findings. They have addressed some of the physical security items that were identified. However, Helene recovery and staff changes in 2025 have slowed implementation, but it is still on their radar to work on these items. Before I move on from that, are there any questions related to the Jefferson Wells audits? Okay, I'm not hearing any. So I'm going to move on to the inventory audits with fleet management, Harrah's Cherokee Center, and the water warehouse. So in spring of 2025, the city engaged PB mayors to conduct inventory audits of fleet management, Harrah's, and the water warehouse. The objective was to provide city leadership with an independent assessment of inventory controls, operational efficiency, compliance, and risk management. Audit results have been shared with the committee members for review as well. That was also true with the Jefferson Wells audits. The last of the PB mayors' final audit reports were received in October of 2025. The inventory audits revealed no major findings. We did receive detailed audit results and provided management responses that were shared with the departments and the divisions, and action plans are in development for some identified issues having been resolved. Water warehouse, in particular, has been proactive in resolving some of the recommendations that were made. I'm sorry, before I leave that, were there any questions related to the inventory audits?
Not for me.
None from me.
All right. So the risk assessment and audit plan with Plant Moran. I just want to mention that the city issued an RFP at the end of fiscal year 2025 and awarded our co-sourced internal audit contract to Plant Moran. And I'm now going to turn over the presentation to their team, who will do their own introductions. They are online with us today. We have 3 representatives from Plant Moran. So let me switch to their presentation. 1 second, please. Okay. Is everyone seeing the risk assessment and audit plan now?
Yep.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Plan team, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Frank. Good afternoon, members of the Audit Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to present our 2025 risk assessment results and related internal audit plan. Before we run through our agenda and our plan for today, I do want to take a moment to express my gratitude for the opportunity to serve the city of Asheville and this committee. We very much appreciate the collaboration and support from city personnel with whom we've worked, specifically Becky, Frank, and Tony. Overall, the city staff with whom we've worked have been very supportive of our process, and we feel that this reflects very well in the results. So here's our plan for our time. We're going to start with some team introductions in just a moment here, followed by a concise overview of risk assessment objectives, our approach, results, as well as the internal audit plan, timeline, and next steps. We've allocated time for your questions and comments, but please feel free to ask as we go. We always appreciate and So for introductions, I'll kick us off. I'm Matt Bowden. I'm a partner in the Plant Moran Risk and Accounting Advisory Services practice. I've been with the firm for 19 years. And in addition to dedicating my career to serving public sector clients, I also serve the firm as the management consulting public sector market segment leader, helping to foster collaboration among our 13 management consulting practices as well as our assurance team. So this puts me in a great position to ensure that we are optimizing our service to you as our clients with the right subject matter experts and the right collaboration across the firm for our internal audit activities. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to Brian O'Neill next.
Thanks, Matt. So my name is Brian O'Neill. I'm a senior manager in the Risk and Accounting Advisory Services group here at Plant Moran, working alongside Matt and Jessica. And in my going up on 10 years with the firm, primarily focusing on risk assessments, internal audit, internal controls, identifying opportunities for efficiencies, identifying control remediation strategies, primarily focused on the public sector. Do a little bit of commercial work as well, but primarily focusing on municipalities, school districts, etc. And I'll hand it off to Jessica.
Thanks, Brian. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Boris. I'm a manager with our Risk and Accounting Advisory Services practice at Plant Moran. I've been with the firm for about 5 years now, and work really closely with both Brian and Matt for all things public sector.
So I'll go ahead and just give a project overview of how we went through our risk assessment process. So we kicked things off in the July and August timeframe with our kickoff planning phase. We met at this point with Frank to align on expectations and identify internal audit priorities tied to the city's strategic goals. The August timeframe was really focused around the risk assessment. So this included meeting with key individuals within the city, understanding city management's views towards internal audit. Where do they see the need for specific audits over the next few years? What are some troublesome areas, some areas where we think they could benefit from internal audit? So from there, what we did was we then sent out a survey to identify what departments, how departments view different risks within the city. From there, we went in to analyze those results, any prior audit findings, emerging risks, previous ACFRs, to develop a risk ranking and audit coverage. Then between October and November, we consolidate all these insights into a 3-year internal audit plan. So this was really identifying internal audit units from FY 2026 through FY 2028. Now, we do recognize we don't expect the timeline to be set in stone and adhere to that 100%. There will be items that come up where we shift resources around, shift timing of internal audits. So this is really a simulation of what the city thinks could most benefit from an internal audit activity. And these aren't gotcha exercises. These are to be value-add exercises to identify opportunities for stronger internal controls, but also process improvement. Frank, we can go to the next slide. So our approach was really to identify and prioritize risks that pose operational, financial, or compliance exposure to the city. This helped form the foundation for this internal audit plan. So as I mentioned, we used a combination of surveys, interviews, and analyses. So we distributed the risk assessment survey to 18 departments, focusing on individuals at that senior leadership level that are most familiar with day-to-day risk. We then conducted interviews with leadership and subject matter experts so we could better understand those root causes and current mitigation practices. So we analyzed the survey and interview results, documented those risks, how they're currently being managed. We used these to identify that 3-year internal audit plan. So this concentrates on areas with the greatest need for enhanced controls and oversight. We then, our risks were scored based on 2 factors, impact and likelihood. These are rated on a scale from 1 to 5. Inherent risk score is then the average of the impact and likelihood of ratings. We categorize these using a scale from incidental to major. These categories helped us really compare risks objectively, ensured we focused our attention on areas that matter most. Again, measures 0 through 25, ranking incidental, minor, moderate, elevator, major. Once we completed that assessment, we translated the results into the audit plan. This targets gaps in higher risk areas identified within surveys and interviews. And I'll hand it over to Jess to really walk through the plan in more detail on how we're going to deliver that internal audit plan.
Thanks, Brian. So the risk assessment results were prioritized based on which risks are most likely to occur or have the greatest impact on the city. So the risk heat map here displays the assessment ratings for each auditable unit, and the values in the orange shaded area of the heat map represent the highest rated auditable units. So from our assessment, the 4 highest rated auditable units to the city are human resources, transportation, capital projects, and information and technology services. You can go to the next slide, please. All right. And then this slide details a little bit more about the potential risks that we evaluated as part of the risk assessment for the 4 highest rated auditable units. So for human resources, the potential risks that were evaluated were related to retention, recruitment, and turnover. For transportation, the risks were related to revenue collections, grant management, and then capital projects. The risks were related to budgeting and project timelines. And then for information and technology services, the risks that were evaluated were related to system downtime, change management, new technologies, cybersecurity, access controls, and system design. All right. And then to dive into our internal audit plan, starting with fiscal year 2026, the first 3 audits that we have scheduled under the 3-year internal audit plan include revenue and payment collections, which we have initiated and we're currently on track with the progress. Then we have grants management, which is planned for execution in Q4 of fiscal year 2026. Then we have cybersecurity, which we will conduct concurrently with the grants management audit. And then to go into a little bit more detail for the first 3 audits, each audit really kind of focuses on areas critical to financial accuracy, regulatory compliance, and organizational security. So for the revenue and payment collections internal audit, our objective is to ensure that all revenue received is accurately recorded and properly safeguarded. So we'll be reviewing key processes such as accounts receivable aging, collection procedures, how payments are recorded, and how different payment methods are handled. And the departments and divisions that are included in the scope are parking services, stormwater services, and street cut. The grants management internal audit is designed to ensure that the city is fully compliant with grant requirements and reporting standards. So we'll examine the receipt and oversight of grant funds, compliance with regulations and accounting standards, and how grant-related revenues and expenditures are monitored and reported. So the departments and divisions included in the scope here are capital management, community and economic development, fire and police, transportation, and public works. Then for the cybersecurity internal audit, we will evaluate the consistency and security of the city's IT procurement and software management practices. So we'll be assessing different procurement controls, software inventory and optimization practices, and how the city and IT services department manages data security and oversight of third-party service providers. All right, then this slide kind of outlines our internal audit schedule for fiscal years 2027 through 2029. So this timeline reflects audits that are prioritized based on our risk assessment results and can be updated depending on resource availability and differing risk levels. For fiscal year 2027, we'll begin with the capital projects, data analytics, and payroll internal audits. Then in fiscal year 2028, we will execute the user access and segregation of duties, vendor management, workforce management, and procurement cards internal audit. Then in fiscal year 2029, we will execute the crisis and response and communication internal audit. And we will also complete the cycle for prior audit remediation to ensure that all findings from previous audits have been addressed. And with that, we leave some room for some questions, if anyone has any questions for us.
Yeah, I can start us off.
Hey.
Yeah. So first question is just for for the risk assessment. We had an existing risk assessment that was done several years ago. Did you guys consider that information when looking at the results of your own risk assessment, just to see, were there any significant differences in opinion in terms of what the riskier focus areas are to the city?
I don't think there's much of a difference, Nate, there. I guess the main difference was that, so we want to look at what has been audited recently, and the higher risk areas that were in the prior risk assessment were factored into the recent audit plan. So that does decrease the risk because you have looked at the audit unit recently. But by and large, I wouldn't say there was anything that was alarming between the two of them. When we compare ours versus the prior one.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. And is the plan to cover like all of the areas identified in your heat map within a 3-year period? Is that right? Or I guess it's a 4-year period, right?
So we probably will not get to all of them. So in talking with Frank, our target was roughly 3 to 4 internal audits per year. We'll revisit those at the beginning of each fiscal year, just once we see, okay, what's going to be the scope. But generally speaking, given the contract, we think we can get through 3 to 4 per year. Probably we won't get to all of them, which I think that's a good thing because we don't want to be spending resources on an audit unit or a scope area that we may not find significant value in the audit. So it may make sense to actually revisit some of these and audit them more than once. Matt?
Yeah, I would just like to add that we do have a plan and we do have a structured approach, but within that structure is flexibility. So should circumstances change, should there be a specific request for us to address, we absolutely have the ability to quickly pivot, move things around, and reprioritize as appropriate.
Got it. All right. I've got 2 more, which I'll combine. So in terms, as Frank laid out, we just had several, not just, but there were several internal audit reports that were issued in the 18 months since this committee last met. I assume you guys considered the results of those internal audit reports as part of your risk assessment procedures. And then secondly, I know it wasn't your internal audits, but are you guys going to be responsible for performing the remediation testing that's outlined kind of throughout the internal audit cycle?
So yes, and to the second one, our plan for the prior audit remediation, we have it outlined in the timeline as really going all the way through the audit because we don't expect to have every single HCCA audit finding remediated on a specific date. But if we see, okay, 2 or 3 of those items have been remediated, it may make sense for us to visit those items at that point. And what we like to do is we just have a consolidated tracker of all the audit findings. And then as we go through, whether it's quarterly updates, whether it's semi-annual updates of audit findings, we'll provide an update on what we've tested from a remediation standpoint in that period.
Appreciate it. That's all I had. Any other committee members? Tony, go ahead.
Yeah, hey Nate, I'm just going to jump in quickly. If there were any questions from any of the rest of the committee members, Tony McDowell, Finance Director. And first of all, I just want to say thank you to the Plant Moran team. It's been great working with them over these first few months. They did a great job on this risk assessment. And one comment I always like to make when we're talking about risk assessments, and this is really maybe for any community members who are out there watching this broadcast, is a risk assessment tells you what are the areas of your business that are at the highest risk. And a lot of that comes from simply the nature of the work they do. It's not really a statement on how well or not how well a particular area is performing. So I always like to put that out there because I don't want folks to look at the risk assessment and say, oh my gosh, the reason transit is on there is because they're doing a horrible job at their work, right? That's not what this is about. This is really, like these guys said, it's all about looking at areas of the city's business and determining what are the ones that are at the highest risk and and making sure that we're addressing those risks. So again, I just wanted to chime in and say that. So thank you.
Any other committee comments? All right, I guess we're back to you, Frank.
Yes, sir. Thanks again to the Plant Moran team. Y'all have been fantastic to work with. It's really been a pleasure over the last couple of months to keep things moving forward. So moving on, I need to share my screen once again. One moment. Okay, and confirming everybody can see this?
Yep.
Great. So I want to talk for a moment about the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Internal Audit. That is a mouthful. Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery is shortened to CDBGDR, and that is a federal program. The city of Asheville in this past summer of 2025 issued an RFP and awarded a co-sourced internal audit contract to Clifton Larson Allen LLP. And I do want to mention, just in case this is confusing at all, because it is a federal procurement, we had to follow federal procurement standards that were very specific, and those were different than the RFP that we issued for our, what I will call regular internal audit program that was awarded to Plant Moran. So it's a different procurement, but the city was awarded $225 million and change for CDBG-DR, and an award of that size requires an internal auditor by federal standards. So we went through that federal procurement process. It was awarded, went to council. The contract is for 6 years, and I will call it Clifton Larson Allen CLA. CLA has met with staff and is starting to formulate steps for their risk assessment and audit plan. So that work has commenced. It commenced at the beginning, really end of December, beginning of January. We're in active conversations with them now. And I'll just mention that for future agenda items, once we get a little further along with the CDBG-DR work, you'll be hearing more about this in subsequent special meetings. So any questions about that?
Nope.
Okay. Moving on. I'm sorry. Sandra, did you have something?
No.
Okay, sorry. I do want to mention our ethics and compliance hotline activity. In the last 18 months, we've had 30 cases submitted to the ethics and compliance hotline. 14 were submitted by employees, 16 by either residents, former employees, or we just don't know. 25 of the cases were personnel matters that were handled by department leadership and human resources, and 5 were intended for organizations other than the city. These numbers literally just updated in the last 24 hours. There's only one case that's currently open. We have 2 that have recently closed, so all others are reserved and closed. And the city's ethics policy was recently updated by Human Resources. It includes the city's ethics hotline as a method for employees to report ethical concerns. Any questions about that?
For consistency and branding, when you get done with this, will you shoot me this picture?
Nope.
Because I'll make that.
Okay. Well, wrapping my part up, I will just, again, share the key takeaways. Obviously, we worked with Jefferson Wells to complete the HERA's and Fleet Management Operations audit. We worked with PB Mayors to complete the inventory audits for 3 divisions. And now, of course, we're working with Plant Moran, so you'll hear more from them in the near future. Again, contracted with Clifton Larson Allen for CDBG-DR internal audit, and the ethics hotline has 29 of 30 cases closed in that 18-month period. And are there any questions?
Yes, Frank, I have one for you.
Okay.
Just in terms of the internal audit position, so
Yes.
since we last met, Lauren Grin had left the city. Any update for the committee just on the status of or plans to fill that position?
The position is currently vacant. I see Tony came off mute, so I'm going to let Tony take it.
Oh, thanks, Frank. And great question, Nate. So yeah, so that position did become vacant. I think Lauren's official last day with the city was in early January. We're in the process right now working with HR to evaluate the position before we post it. I think, as you all know, we also are looking at, you've seen the news in the last few weeks, we are looking at a budget gap next year. So we're being a little bit more deliberate in terms of thinking through what we want to do before we immediately post that position. But we're going to be making some decisions hopefully soon on moving forward or not moving forward in the short term with that.
Sounds good.
I have a comment on the consideration for the process improvement on the HCCA regarding the process list. I read it and I'm just wondering if there's recommend. I don't know whether the auditor can go back or maybe the management think about using something more modern, because there's statements about changing cartridges and printers and things more manual into something that is more AI, so that it will streamline the process and less of an issue with the existing processes.
I'm sorry, I think I was muted. We are in discussion with the team at Harrah's about how they utilize their technology to rely less on handwritten records. I see Becky nodding her head. So that has been something that's been highlighted for them to move away from whenever possible. So it is part of the remediation plan.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly. Any other questions? Thank you.
All right. Yep, I appreciate it, Frank. Yeah, so I think we can move into our last agenda item, which is the fiscal year 2025 external audit update. So I'll turn it over to Becky Ogles, Assistant Finance Director.
Thanks, Nate. Good afternoon, Becky Ogles, Assistant Finance Director. I know we all have a hard stop at 3, so I'm going to move through this pretty quickly, but if you do have questions, please let me know. So the fiscal year 2025 financial statements were issued on November 14th, 2025. Cherry Beckert was our auditors again, and they issued an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the highest level of assurance. The Cherry Beckert presented the results of the audit to council on December 9th of 2025. They did identify one accounting error that was made by a staff member, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And of course, they had to present that to the board. Unassigned fund balance for the general fund for 25 was 14%. It was down from the prior year, and it was slightly below the city's threshold of 15%. So the single audit portion of the audit, which is the grant kind of review and compliance, was delayed. So it was not issued in November, but that was really due to delays from getting the compliance supplement from the federal government. We are actually actively working on it, and we hope that we will be done with it actually by the end of the week, so tomorrow. So we will have more information on that later. So why have an external audit? Well, first of all, it's required by general statute. And second of all, as we mentioned, the single audit, that is required for entities who receive federal or state funding over a certain threshold, and the city does meet that threshold. It's also best practice, and it provides transparency for the city. It also is an assurance to our debt agencies of our financial statements. And then it's also very important that our auditors do an independent review, and that is one of the reasons that the city has in our policy that we rotate firms every 5 years. I think we are on year 3 or 4 with Cherry Beckert. 3, okay, sorry, they go by very, very quickly. So we will have 2 more years with them, and then we'll put it out for an RFP again to look to make a switch. So the different types of opinion, they are listed there. As I mentioned earlier, we did receive an unmodified or the clean version or a clean opinion for our financials. They identified no fraud, illegal acts, violations of law, or regulations. There was one material weakness finding that was presented to City Council, and the presentation that the auditors did is linked here. It's a lot more lengthy. It's lengthier than ours, so if you guys want to review it, perfectly fine. And then the ACFR, at least the financial statements, is on our website, and we will post, of course, the compliance supplement as soon as it's completed. Oh, go back 1, Frank. Thanks. Go forward. There's okay, I think you might have gone too far. Sorry. So the material weakness finding, so that's a deficiency in an internal control that was found. So this actually, unfortunately, was one transaction that was missed, that was not accrued appropriately. So the work was completed in fiscal year 25. We did not receive the invoice and pay the invoice until fiscal year 26. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, it was one invoice, but due to the amount and the size of the fund, it did rise to the materiality of a material weakness. We have put extra measures in place to make sure that this does not happen again. We have a couple of people who will be reviewing those accruals at year end. There's a lot of them, so we will, have put extra things in place to make sure that this does not happen again. Next slide, please, Frank. So as we mentioned, fund balance was at 14%, which is below our policy target of the 15. This just kind of outlines where unassigned fund balance for the general fund has been over the last 10-ish years. We've had a lot of fluctuation, but we did come in a little bit lower than our target. Next slide, please, Frank. So back in 2021, the LGC implemented the FPIC program, which kind of just looks at a couple of different metrics across all government entities. There are 20 performance indicators. I believe, and if any of them are negative, you are required to submit something to the LGC, basically stating how you will correct these or why they occurred. So that letter that has to be signed off by the majority of the council will be on council's agenda for the 27th for approval.
And, sorry, I'll just jump in quickly on that one too. To add that the indicators that were negative that we're having to respond to was the material weakness finding that Becky talked about. It was also the decline in fund balance. And then there was a third one, which we really didn't get into here, but that's the water fund net income was negative for fiscal year 2025. And that was directly a result of us losing 2 months of customer service revenue, along with us incurring a lot of costs to repair the system that we haven't gotten FEMA reimbursement, or at least we hadn't gotten FEMA reimbursement by June 30, 2025. So that led to a negative net income in water, and that was a third performance indicator that we had to respond to. And that, like Becky said, that letter is on council's agenda for their approval at next Tuesday's meeting. So, sorry, Becky.
Okay. Sandra, I think you were.
Yeah, I'm just, so what you're said is that the negative 2.8% decrease will be reimbursed.
So no, so that is not that's not the fund balance decrease.
Okay.
What was mentioned was in our water fund, it
Yes.
actually threw up a negative. And of course, the unassigned fund balance that we referred to earlier, that was actually just for the general fund. So that does not include our water fund. But
Okay.
yes, one of the reasons for the negative FPIC is because of just the timing and everything related to the water fund and reimbursements.
Okay. Thank you.
I would add though, the general fund balance decline, some of that was related to Helene. So just, we underperformed on some of our revenues, particularly our sales tax revenue right after Helene. If that revenue had come in as expected, I don't think we would have seen fund balance dip below 15%. So there was some Helene impact there as well.
Okay, so next slide. So as I mentioned, all of the materials are on the city's website. Staff has prepared the FPIC responses, which will go to council on Tuesday for signatures. We are currently working on the compliance supplement to get that out as soon as possible. And honestly, preliminary work will begin for the 26th audit. We normally start actually in April, so only a few months before that will get started. So next slide, Frank. I think it's just key takeaways, and I know we've only got 5 minutes, so I will not go through those, but if anybody has any other questions on the external audit, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Becky. Any questions from the committee members? I do not have any.
I do.
Great, thank you.
All right. Let's see here, close us out. So public comment, next section. We have no public comments. Any audio recordings have been transcribed and have been provided to the committee along with pre-subscribed written comments. And with that, I will now adjourn the meeting unless there are any objections. Not hearing any?
None.
All right, so adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank
Thank
you
you
all.
all. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.